be on top again. I'm not gonna let you take me down. It's gonna be the whole 9 yards or nothing.
And today's show is all about the issues of criminal law, misdemeanors and felonies, and the difference between both.
Hi, I'm Tom Mealy. Welcome to Legal Straight Talk.
I'm Brett Harrison.
You know, last week, Brett, we had the opportunity of having Tom Dow on, and the week before that, we actually talked about issues of personal injury law when it came down to no-fault benefits and the benefits of what no-fault really means and how it helps out.
And that's just the first part. We're going to get into that over the next couple of weeks. We also talked about insurance companies and how they deal with their own clients and insured.
Well, insurance companies, I've always, listen, I've always said insurance companies are in business to make money. They really don't care what happens to you. They may give the illusion that they do, but that's just my perspective of it. But today, we're going to be talking about a whole different area of law. We're going to talk about criminal law. But there are multiple areas of criminal law, and this is your area of expertise within the firm. Tell me the difference. I mean, people say, well, I'm getting hit with a misdemeanor or I'm getting hit with a felony. There are several different types of misdemeanors. How many levels of misdemeanors are there going from let's say, the least up to the most severe area of misdemeanors?
There's three levels. There's unclassified misdemeanor, there's a B misdemeanor, and then the top level of misdemeanor is an A misdemeanor.
So let's clarify the low-end misdemeanor. What is that?
Let me just, it's not a matter of, it is classification. It's about the degree of severity, whether it's, for example, the difference between petty larceny and grand larceny could be just the amount that was stolen, the value.
And that's a low-end misdemeanor?
Yeah, petty larceny would be an A misdemeanor. And then there's felonies that would gravitate it up to grand larceny.
But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if we have multiple levels of misdemeanor, I need to know, because this is not my area of expertise at all. So if somebody's out there and they're watching, what constitutes the lowest end of a misdemeanor?
Let me just start with one thing so I think you'll understand the differences. For example, when you ever see on applications for employment, it says, have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor? Any criminal convictions? Criminal conviction, at least in the state of New York, means any conviction for an A misdemeanor, a B misdemeanor, or any felony, obviously. And there's different levels of felonies. And that's important because misdemeanors can have a great effect on your ability to work. Can have ability, for example.
But do you have to say when you're filling out that application, what would you say the low-end misdemeanor was?
For our purposes, in this case, it would be a B misdemeanor and an A misdemeanor.
Okay, and there's one even below that.
Unclassified.
Unclassified.
For the purposes of this.
What would constitute an unclassified misdemeanor?
It's just a level of.
So if somebody's filling out that application for employment and it says, "Have you ever been convicted of a
criminal? Have you ever been convicted of a crime?" That would mean an A misdemeanor, B misdemeanor, or obviously any felonies.
But no unclassified misdemeanor.
Right, or violations. Like when you get traffic tickets. For example, if you get a speeding ticket, or you get
parking ticket.
Parking ticket.
Those are unclassified.
No, those are just violations, which is the step below anything that makes it a crime in the state of New York. In other words, there's no A, B, and then.
Let's assume for 1 minute I'm driving my car and I'm late and somebody clocks me at, let's say, 100 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour lane. And I get hit with a violation. Is it a violation I'm getting hit with or a misdemeanor?
Well, that's going to be, okay. When a police officer stops you, he's saying you violated, and it depends which area of law. Now, since you're going so far over the speed limit, it could theoretically take you into the reckless driving, reckless endangerment.
What would you consider,
because
most people have speeding tickets.
You're talking a normal speeding ticket. In other words, if you're in a 40-mile-an-hour zone, you go 50 or 60. Not in excess of 45, 50 miles an hour.
So if you're in a 30-mile-an-hour zone,
right,
hypothetically, and it's not a school zone, because that falls into a different category. So if you're in a 30-mile-an-hour zone and somebody clocks you at doing 50 miles an hour, 9 times out of 10, they're going to get hit with what?
That's just a violation of speeding.
Violation.
Violation.
What
Which is not any type of misdemeanor.
Right. So what would constitute a misdemeanor in the area of speed? If the speed limit is 30, how fast do you have to
Well-
be going to fall into reckless driving or into a different
Well,
category other than a violation?
You could also be driving with a suspended license.
No, I'm just speeding. I'm just in a hurry to get somewhere.
Well,
And I'm not saying that that's what I want people to do, understanding they're going to get away with it. Don't get that. If I was driving my car and there's a 30-mile-an-hour zone and I'm doing 50, you're telling me that I would get hit with a violation. Now I'm driving the same car, same area, 30 miles an hour, but now instead of doing 30,
You're going
I'm
100.
doing 70.
no, you're still going to just get hit with a speeding ticket.
I'm doing 100.
Now you might get hit with reckless
And
driving.
where does that fall into what category?
That could either be an A or B misdemeanor. It depends how reckless, and there's a whole bunch of factors that go into that. But now, I mean, we could spend all day on the differences, but I think it's probably more important to understand the concept of not every crime. Most people think of crimes as has to be a violent crime, has to be either like a DWI, has to be an assault, has to be a robbery.
That's a felony, though.
Some of those are felonies, and some are misdemeanors, like the
Would be an A misdemeanor.
DWI. But DWI can also be a felony, depending on how many priors you have. So
All right,
there's
so I'm driving my car, and I was over at, I don't know, let's say my friend, I don't know, come on, Effie's house, all right?
Right.
And she said, here, Tommy, you know, we're having a couple of glasses of wine, she's having a barbecue in the backyard, and all of a sudden, you know, I drank, let's say, 3 or 4 glasses of wine, and I feel good, and I'm driving home, but I get pulled over, and let's say my limit comes in at 0.9, which is, in the state of New York, I'm over the limit.
you're over the limit.
Is that considered a felony, or is that a misdemeanor? And I've never had any kind
You
of,
had no priors.
I've never had any priors.
No, that's going to be a misdemeanor. But I do want to make one thing clear, though. It's not illegal to drink and drive. It's illegal to drink past a certain point where your blood alcohol content makes your ability impaired. So there's like, in other words, depending on the size, there's
See, no, I don't believe that, and I'll tell you why. Because the New York State says anything over 0.8 is considered driving while impaired.
there's also right.
So
Or intoxicated.
0.8, let's take somebody my size. I'm 211 pounds. I know I'm lying, but trust me, I'm 211 pounds. I'm 211 pounds. For me to get to 0.8 is usually maybe 2 beers.
Depends over what time period, depends what you've had in your system.
It was 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I went to my friend's house. We had a couple of beers. I had 2 beers, and I decided, okay, we're going to go home. We were sitting out in the back deck on a hot summer day. Now, I know that 2 beers in my system, I'm fine. But yet, if they pull me over, I'm in trouble.
A lot of that's going to depend upon the amount of time between the drinks.
I left his house. I had a
If
drink.
let's
I
say
left it
you-
within an hour.
Within an hour, you know, it may take 2 or 3 drinks depending on what you had. Now, beer is different than, let's say you had a couple of shots. You know, everybody's different in how they handle their alcohol, how it
But
goes
it's
through
just,
the system.
what I don't understand about the system and in the state of New York, especially here on Suffolk County, is if I have 2 beers and I'm 0.9,
You're
even
going-
though I'm good, I'm in the pokey for the night.
Well, you'll be arrested.
All right, so now all of a sudden I got to get somebody to bail me out, but I know physically I am okay. Do you see
But
any
you have to-
justification in that?
Yeah, because your ability, they've had tests and so forth when they've come
But
up
my
with this
ability
law.
is good.
But the other problem, hold on, the other problem, it's impaired though.
To whose standards?
And you got to remember, well, under New York State, and understand too, if we didn't lower it to .08, it used to be .10 was the driving while intoxicated. We would have lost federal funding for our highways and streets and so
So,
forth.
all right, so now you're opening up
There's
a
a
whole other
financial
can.
aspect
So
to it.
now the state of New York, the county of Suffolk, county of Nassau, lowers it to 0.8 because if they didn't, by Big Brother up in Albany, they wouldn't get funding for highways?
That's correct.
Now
We would lose because-
tell me where that sounds logical.
We don't want to lose our funding.
So it's all about the dollar.
But it's also about safety.
It's not about safety, Brett, because people can
But you know
drink
what
at 0.8, and they can do it.
They can
I
function.
can do it. You can do
They
it.
can function, exactly.
And they can function fine.
I think it's misleading too. I think people feel they can drive, and then you know, a lot of times they may-
1.0, I say you're borderline, and I would agree with 1.0. And I would agree with that, because even me at 1.0, I'm a little cockeyed.
But Tom, I'd like to take this a little bit, which I think happens a lot more. The effects of, let's use a DWI, okay? Because
Okay.
I want to take you down a road that most people only see the criminal consequences, and I think it's really, really important to understand the potential civil consequences. Okay. Let's say you're a city worker, or you work for the state as a teacher in the county, or you have some type of license. Let's say you sell stocks, okay, and you get stopped for a DWI. Okay.
What do you? What's,
okay, now
what's
what's
the
going to
amount?
happen? Now, let's say doesn't make a difference. Let's say it's 0.11. Okay,
Okay.
BAC.
Go.
All right. Now what's going to happen is automatically, if you're a city worker, it's going to get reported your arrest
To your employer.
Right. But here's the problem with that. So now let's say now you've had to hire an attorney.
Right.
Okay, and whatever, how many thousands that may or may not be. Okay, now let's say you're a police officer, you may be suspended, you may be put on some type of suspension, okay? But here's the interesting thing is that, let's say now, the same time, you don't get a conditional license in which you're able to drive to and from work.
Which is normally given out to people who have to support a family.
Right, but let's say you're on
No.
Long Island. Let's say you're on Long Island. You need a car. I know, for example, if you live on the South Shore and you want to get to the North Shore and you had to go by train or bus,
It's not going to happen.
it's going to take you forever.
Right.
It costs you a fortune to hire a cab service or what have you. So, if you're a commercial driver, for example, while your license is suspended, there is no conditional license on a commercial driver's license.
So if I have a commercial driver's license, do you need a commercial driver's license for a cab?
It depends. I don't. Well, you'll be suspended anyway.
Oh, so let's say
you're a
I
truck
work
driver.
for one of these
You're a truck
local.
Cement driving or whatever.
Yeah,
big
right,
truck.
or-
there is no
Conditional license.
So it means you
So
will
that
not
means
be
you
able to
lost your
drive.
job.
Now, let's say you're the sole supporter and you have three children. Okay. Now, this is all while the case is pending. You will not be able to drive.
So you lose your job. You can no longer support your family.
Or you're suspended, let's say 6
assume
months.
you, as an attorney, all right, and I'm not saying whether it's you or whether it's any other attorney on Long Island. Let's say that you get that charge either downgraded or dismissed.
But here's the problem.
Is there any?
Here's the problem. I'm going to use the commercial driver now. The commercial driver, the truck driver, I'll call him. The truck driver, there is no plea he could take unless it's to a it can't go to an impaired, which is under the .08. He can't go to an intoxication, a plea to that, because automatically he can't drive his commercial driver's license. He'll be suspended. So he has to do a non-DWI, non-intox type of plea. The problem is it's going to take a while. He might not be driving, and his trial may not happen for a year and a half, depending on what county he's in. And if there's now throughout this whole time, even though this is the part that gets me, and a lot of people when I talk to him, as you and I talk off air about this, but he's presumed innocent.
Oh, you know that's political all the way down the line.
Yeah, but in this case-
we are so far from presumed innocent.
And you brought up the point, isn't he better off? He's better off selling a vial of crack. At least he can still drive. You brought that up to me the other day.
Yeah,
So
that's
the
a
problem
shame.
is, so now the civil consequences is, let's say he's the sole supporter of his house and he's got 3 kids, never been arrested. Let's say he's a 51-year-old guy. He had a couple of drinks. No accident, nobody hurt. He was stopped, let's say, at a checkpoint where they just breathalyze everyone or ask if you've been drinking, and he was honest. He said, sure, yeah, I did. I had 2 drinks, but I'm fine. So they give him a breathalyze. Now there's reasonable cause to see, well, let me see if we can breathalyze him. Let's see what he has. And he fails. Now they arrest him. Okay, he's made a statement. I had a couple of drinks. He was honest. And now, because of that, he no longer can drive, at least until either he's found not guilty, which could take a while.
Could take up to a year.
Or more. Now, the problem with that is he's got to pay his mortgage, he's got to put his kids through school, or whatever
The bottom line, he's
expenses.
got some issues.
Not only that, but now what?
So
What are you doing? So we're treating this guy Much worse. Now, let's
Much
take
worse than the guy who
Now-
actually got caught
now,
smoking
once this-
a vial of crack.
Now, once this guy gets reinstated, let's say in a year or two, no commercial company's going to hire him.
That's right.
He's a liability. So now he's lost that career totally. Now let's go to the stockbroker. Let's say he's charged with a serious type of misdemeanor or something. It asks you every time you renew your state license, whether you're, by the way, whether you're a hairdresser, which you have to have a state license for, or whether you're a teacher or anything like that, which you have a license, they ask, when you renew your license, have you been convicted of a crime in the last, whatever, since your last? And now all of a sudden that could affect whether they get fired. So, there's a lot of, people only look at the criminal consequences. Am I going to jail? Am I not going to jail? Am I going to be on probation? But what about the civil consequences? I no longer have a career. I lost
what do
my
you do?
job.
So what do? You come to a checkpoint, you had a couple of beers. Do you say yes or do you say no?
I'm
And
not.
take your chances. My chances are better off if I said no at the checkpoint than they are if I said yes. Because if I said yes at the checkpoint, they're going to administer the blow test. If I say no and I don't look like I have any glassy eyes, there is a flip of the coin as to whether or not that cop's going to let you go by.
That's
So
right.
the moral of the story is: are you honest at the checkpoints or are you dishonest?
that.
No, it's
that's-
a clear-cut
that-
answer. It's a clear-cut answer. And this is why society
What did they
is
say?
where it is today. This is why, Brett, because the laws are not governed so much for safety, they're governed for profit. And that's where it
Well,
needs
I
to
think
come
this
down
is
the line.
also safety because when you're driving, when you're building impaired,
I think-
and you're
yeah.
driving a vehicle which is a
1.1,
weapon,
1.2, 2.6.
You're talking about a 3-ton weapon you're in.
I get it. I get it. But for the average Joe that has a family that went to so-and-so's house for a couple of beers in the afternoon, gets stopped at a checkpoint, are you telling me that it is beneficial for that guy to tell that cop, yes, I had a couple of beers? Or is it beneficial for him to tell that cop, no, I didn't?
All I'll tell you is this. If you say no and he doesn't give you any type of breathalyzer or any other indicia that you've been drinking, whether you're slurring your words or what have you,
I'm talking of 2 beers.
I agree
A
with
beer
you.
and a half.
I agree. I'm not. Let's even say you had a vodka because it has no smell. Vodka has no smell.
But that may bring
So-
your limits up higher, though.
Depending on what you had and what it's mixed with.
2 glasses of wine.
But what I'm saying is if you say, no, I haven't, and they do not check you, the odds are they probably won't pull you over. Now, if it's 3 in the morning, I think there's an assumption, or most people think, what the heck are you doing out at 3
I
in the
agree with
morning?
that. I
But,
agree.
if it's 6 o'clock,
I agree. I agree if it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And you and I have had our share of seeing people come in. I think recently we saw one case that it was something like 3 point.
well, 2 point.
2 point was it 2
Yeah,
point?
yeah, but this
2
is an
point something?
alcoholic because you
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to find your key to put in.
Right,
it's,
right. People like that should not be on the road. People like that are looking to use their vehicle as a weapon. They're looking to kill somebody, and it better not be my child. But the point is that we're talking about issues of misdemeanor and felonies, and now we got into alcoholism, which
Because
is a
I
very
think
important
people
thing.
need to understand the effects. Now, like I was talking about, over those 2 or 3 drinks, personally, leave your car, get the ticket, for whatever it's $100, $200 for the parking ticket, get home safe so you can take care of your family, and you won't lose your house, you won't lose your job, your career.
Yeah, in many cases, there are cab companies out there. We know of several of them that are out there. And in fact, most of them on Long Island that we know of will participate in getting you home safely with no charge.
Matter of fact, we've even done that a couple of times where we've sponsored.
Yeah, having a cab come Christmas time. But, it's very simple to call the cab company. Most of these cab companies do have these programs set up that if you've had too much to drink, listen, if you want to gamble on losing your career, losing your livelihood, losing your house, losing your family, losing your wife, losing your kids,
Or hurting somebody
over a
else.
couple of beers, it's not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate message is if you're going to have a couple of drinks, which I'm not saying is wrong or right, do it, but do it smartly.
Responsibly.
Have somebody have a designated driver, which you see, or call somebody to pick you up, leave your car there. That's the smartest thing. Don't put yourself in the predicament. Because then you're going to have to hire people like us, which you're going to have to pay money for us as attorneys. You're also going to have to deal with potential civil consequences of losing your job, losing your house, losing your career, all over a couple of drinks.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
Let's talk about, because I know we have a few minutes left out there, let's talk about criminal issues real quick.
Let me just, I want to talk to you about something you had brought up before we were talking about. You said, what should I do when a cop comes up to my car? What's the first thing I should do?
Roll down the window.
Well, I wouldn't even do that. The first thing I always tell people is remember, you know, a cop, no matter what time of night it is, or even day, they don't know who they're stopping. They don't know if a person is wanted in another area or they're high or what have you. The first thing I always recommend is put your hands on the steering wheel to make sure the cop is comfortable, that you're not reaching. A lot of times people will go for their license or their insurance card, registration. Now, to a police officer, he doesn't know what he or she doesn't know what you're reaching for. So you're better off
Putting your hands on the
putting
steering
your
wheel.
hands on the steering wheel, waiting for the cop to come by, roll down your window, and let him ask you. The first question I would ask is, why did you stop me? And they'll tell you because either you went through a light, you did this, you did that, and that's fine. Next question I would ask is, he or she, the officer, is going to say, your license, registration, and your insurance card. I would say, as I've said, is that it's in my glove compartment. Would you like to get it, or would you let me get it? Give them the option. And they'll say, no, it's okay for you to get it. You have to calm the situation down. You have to let them feel comfortable because they don't know they don't know you from a hole in the wall, the officers. So you could be reaching for something. There are plenty of guns out there. There are plenty of things you see in the paper, whether it be the Post, the Newsday, the Daily News, where, you know, cop has innocently was shot on a routine stop. So put yourself in the officer's shoes. You would be nervous too. You'd have your hand on your gun. And if you see something metal shining, you don't know. You don't want to take that chance. So put your hands on your steering wheel, politely ask, why did you stop me? And can I get the information for you, or would you like to get it wherever it may be in your car, in the console?
You know, there was something on CNN the other night I was watching, a couple of minutes here before we wrap up, and that's a good point, that as the person being pulled over, you know that police officer has a weapon.
Right.
That police officer does not know that you have a weapon. So as a trained cop, he's trained to watch every move you make, and he has to approach that vehicle with the very strong probability in today's world that you do have a weapon. So that makes a lot of good sense.
Or that you could.
Or you could. You could. So, that does make a lot of sense. I know that I've been pulled over a couple of times, and it wasn't my fault. But I've been pulled over a couple of times, and the first thing I do is I reach into my glove compartment to grab out the necessary information. That's probably the wrong thing to do.
Because let's say you had
he doesn't know.
Let's say you had a shiny metal object in there because
Right.
you have, I don't know, a screwdriver in there,
Right,
or whatever
right.
it is.
And I'm
So
pulling
it's
the screwdriver
it
out
looks-
to get to the
but
stuff.
He sees.
Absolutely. And
that's
this
scary.
cop on CNN, by the way, it was on there, and they showed it on his dash cam. They actually saw this, and this guy did that. He went into his glove compartment, and the police officer fired 3 shots into this guy and killed him. All right, the police officer then broke down afterwards because he assumed that this guy was pulling out of his glove compartment some sort of a weapon, whether it's a gun or a knife. He had no other recourse but to return fire or to fire into that vehicle. And unfortunately, the guy didn't have anything. But anyway, our time is up. I know that next week, next show, we're going to be talking about matrimonial issues.
Yes, that's a fun show too. We're going to have Al Hedayati on
Right.
for that from the office.
Yeah,
and
so
he'll
that's
have
gonna be a lot
some.
of
That should be fun. That's always a juicy topic.
So until then, thanks for watching. Thanks to Cablevision Channel 20 for having us on. We'll see you next week, same place, same time.
See you next week. I'm Brett Harrison, and I've been practicing law for 23 years. And when it comes to the criminal law, I've seen much of it. Especially now, today we talked about the DWI. You know what? Bottom line, people, if you're going to drink, be responsible. That's the one message I can say. You don't want to deal with the consequences both criminally and civilly. The consequences not only to just you, it's more than just you. it's your family, it's your house, it's your children, it's your career. That makes a difference. You make a difference. Also, God forbid you hurt somebody. Now you have to deal with that also, that aspect of things. It's very critical. So if you're going to drink and drive, in a lot of ways you could be playing with Russian roulette. So what I recommend is either have a designated driver or leave your car there, get the ticket. But on the flip side, if you're going to go to an attorney, make sure you go to an attorney that understands and counsels you, not just criminally what can happen to you, but also the civil consequences, or we call it the collateral consequences. The attorney should spend the time to know you, your job, your family, so you fully have a full understanding. That's why you hire a criminal attorney. You hire a criminal attorney with experience. You hire a criminal attorney to explain all the consequences. He's there to just give you everything that could happen and what's best for you. What's best for you may not be what's best for another person. So overall, all I'd say is be careful out there and make sure you hire an attorney that knows what they're doing, has experiences in the courts.